Sunday. It's Sunday morning in Los Angeles right now. It's November 8th. And yesterday we officially voted Donald Trump out of office. It was such an incredible day of this tremendous emotional release because we have been living in a hellscape here for the past 4 years especially. If this is your first time watching this series, I'm Ani Baker. I used to be a public school teacher, and now I try to educate via documentary films. And I started this series in quarantine, partly to educate myself, and now whoever else watches this, about people's experiences of life in 2020 all over the world. I remain aware as a white person in America that my story is not the central story. I come from a Trump-supporting family, many of whom believe that racism doesn't exist, and they will proclaim that. The best way I know how to counter mindsets like that is with education. I love the episode that you're about to watch with Miranda Seranno in Abu Dhabi. Miranda tells us all about how Abu Dhabi has handled the pandemic with huge trucks that sanitize the actual streets, by the way. And she's generous enough to tell us about life from the experience of a young BIPOC woman in the UAE. If you're a white person, it is not your place to declare that racism doesn't exist, because what you mean is that it doesn't exist for you. Instead of assuming, ask questions. There is so much power in asking and listening. White people, when a person of color tells us about their experience, we have to really listen. We have to share with others what we've learned, and we have to advocate for empathy and progress however we can. We all have a lot to learn, and a lot can be learned by listening. So with listening and learning in mind, here is Around the World in 2020, Episode 7, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates.
I felt that Abu Dhabi really took action when things just started getting more intense. It started with closing down borders and limiting who was coming into the country. Then I remember there was a curfew as well. I remember it was really funny because me and my family joked about it. It was, they started with one weekend announcing to everyone that this weekend there's a curfew being put on from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then we were like, okay, well, it's just a weekend. And it was part of like a sterilization, I forgot what the word is, but it was a sterilization thing where they would go out into the streets and it was supposed to be completely empty, and they would sterilize the streets. It was like, I think it was these like trucks that would like spray something onto the streets.
Wow. I have never heard of that one before. Okay.
And I've seen like pictures of like people in like full suits.
Yeah, like a hazmat suit.
Yeah, and they're like spraying alleys and things like this. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not mad.
Yeah, that's like so above and beyond and so proactive that my mind is blown.
Every night at 8 p.m. to the next day, 6 a.m., no one could be outside. I remember they loosened up on that maybe around Eid, I guess. Eid is like the holiday after Ramadan. They loosened it up so it became 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., I think. It's just they wanted people to just stay at home rather than go outside. In the UAE, it's completely normal to see every single person around you when you go out on the streets to wear a mask. It became like a rule, and there were fines that were put in place. I've heard from people they could range from anywhere from 3,000 dirhams to about 5,000 dirhams if you're caught without a mask. They closed down malls for a while, which was such a shock because everyone's like, that's like such a big part of the life. People meet up at malls. We have malls everywhere. So when they closed that down, they closed down cinemas, all places where people could gather. Like a lot of places have like the mall that I would go to a lot, it's called World Trade Center. And when you go in,
is this the one with the roller coaster?
That's Yas Mall. I've also been there.
I know a little bit about how like the malls there are like theme parks. Not that there are rides everywhere, but it's an attraction. Like
I know they put a lot of effort into the malls. It's not just for shopping around and gazing around. It's really a full experience.
Wow.
Yas Mall is the mall in Yas Island. It's just outside Abu Dhabi city. And It's connected to a theme park called Ferrari World, and it's just based off of Ferrari cars, and it's got super fast, really fun rides.
It's so like all the rides are like you're like pretending to drive a Ferrari or what?
There's this one ride called Formula Rossa, and basically it's just this, you just sit there and it's just fast. It's like kind of scary, and they have it's like based off of cars. They have really fun rides for kids where you go there and you learn about how cars are made in Ferrari.
Wow.
They have this one ride that's super cool. It's like a cinema, but then the seats move and then they're like on top of each other, and then the screen is like this huge thing and it looks like you're flying over Italy. And it's so, I think that's the closest I'll ever get to traveling Italy right now, but it was a great experience. It was so fun.
So, question, in America and specifically Los Angeles, like huge corporations are shutting down. Like I read AMC Theaters either is like shuttering a lot of locations or filed for bankruptcy, and like AMC might go under, which is like mind-boggling for us. Local businesses and then also just like huge chains are filing for bankruptcy and going out. Do you think there's any risk of the malls in Abu Dhabi like having to file for bankruptcy or having to shut like completely because they're not making any money right now?
I think because the malls in Abu Dhabi they're so part of the culture there. There are the main malls like World Trade Center, Galleria malls, and the Marina Mall, Abu Dhabi Mall. Like those malls, I feel like they're doing fairly well. I think it also helps that a lot of these malls have a grocery store in them. So people do feel like, oh yeah, we can go into the mall. And obviously when you're in the mall for going groceries, you see all these other shops that you're kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe I could go in those too.
So the grocery store part of the mall stayed open because that was an essential business? Yeah. I see. And then, so does that mean that the other shops were open as well?
I remember shops were completely closed except for the grocery store. So if a mall had a grocery store in it, that was open, but everything else, cafes, restaurants, small shops, clothing, like retail, that was closed.
So is like a mall, a general mall in Abu Dhabi, like a one-stop shop? Like you can go there and get everything. And do people, like when you need to do something, you go to the mall?
Yeah. I just realized you can actually find anything you want in there.
So interesting. I love that so much. Okay, so then everything was shut down for about how long? So it sounds like the lockdown is lightened up now.
I can see the contrast between Abu Dhabi and Dubai right now. I think Dubai was kind of the first one to open up things to the public. They were the ones to allow people to go out, give people a bit more freedom rather than telling them, okay, you have to stay home. There's this Instagram influencer, I guess, based in Dubai, and she was kind of talking about her experience on her Instagram stories, talking about how, okay, it's another week in Dubai, just me in my apartment, and she was there for a really long time and she had to have a permit to go out.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were on a really deep lockdown that Abu Dhabi didn't have. I remember that because people could still go out in Abu Dhabi. I think Abu Dhabi's logic was close down most things so people don't have a reason to go out, so they just stay home anyways. And then recently Abu Dhabi's opened up and a lot of places are very controlled. They're very regulated. Almost every store that I've seen so far inside a mall has a sticker that says maximum of 10 people can be in here, maximum of 5 people, based on the size of the shop itself. Our main source of information, for me at least, for me and my family, was social media. And we relied heavily on the news. So I kind of feel like we were learning about the situation in Abu Dhabi through what was being said on the Gulf News and the National, which is kind of the news that just circulates in the UAE, rather than hearing from like government officials.
Interesting.
We were hearing a lot about COVID-19 from other people's presidents rather than the rulers of the UAE.
What was the reaction from the residents to all of the stricter, I guess, measures that needed to be taken because of the virus? Because like I'm in America where people are throwing fits and you can't tell me to wear a mask, you're taking away my freedom. Any of that going on in Abu Dhabi?
No. everything.
No, you get it. You just put on a mask. It's a virus. What's there not to understand? I love that. No.
My mom always talk about how, oh, it's so uncomfortable wearing a mask, but honestly, I'd hate to go to the hospital.
I just saw, it was like an image just the other day of what it takes to be put on a ventilator. Like you have to actually get a tube down your throat, you know? And they were like, if you think a mask is uncomfortable, this is what we're trying to prevent you from you're on. You think that's going to be comfortable?
I feel like everyone's kind of like, well, it's this or get a fine, and I'd rather not get the fine, so I'll put on the mask, even if it is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone hated staying home, but everyone understood why they had to stay home.
Yeah.
I think that's when the news outlets and social media and things like that were really important in communicating what are the dangers of the coronavirus. People were understanding why they were taking these actions, even though it frustrated them. I remember getting frustrated with, why are they doing this? Why, when you just get frustrated, you always ask, why is it like this? But then I sit there and I think about it, and I'm like, I know why it's like this.
Right. There's an answer to the why. And that's what's so important, and you were able to get there, and so many people, especially so many Americans, haven't been able to get there. But it's like, you're absolutely right. It's natural to be like, why is this happening? Like, why does everything have to stop? Why do I have to lose my livelihood? Why does my income have to stop? And then it's like, oh, right, global pandemic. That's why.
Yeah. And I thought about the COVID-19 situation literally impacting the whole world. Thinking about how it's telling people, hey, think about your neighbor. Think about your community and the people that you interact with. Think about your family. It's like asking people to think about others, especially during this time. Just think about other people. You know, if you hate wearing the mask, think about other people. Who are you impacting? You know?
Was there ever a shared sense, even just in your home, of despair, everyone just being like, I can't handle this? Was morale pretty low, or was it that because you guys were together, you sort of kept each other up and lifted each other's spirits?
There were a lot of moments where individuals of the group, I want to say group, I mean the whole family, plus my godparents, godmother and her kids. As a group, individuals throughout, there were dips in morale. Especially for me, I was done with school, done with whatever was going on. And especially with my godmother's kids as well. My godmother especially, she was going through a really hard time trying to figure out how to get home. But it was always the other parts of the group lifting other people up. So if I was sensing that, okay, my godmother's kids, maybe they're having a little bit of down day, how can I be there for them? Just being like, hey, do you want to play some cards, have a little bit of fun? My parents would set up game night, or my mom would ask my godmother to work out with her in the morning, a little Zumba workout, so it's a bit more fun. My dad would offer to take people on rides around the city just to see things. And my parents were still working at the time too. So we're all just kind of helping each other out to help each other during those days when we have little to no morale. When they left, I remember me, my mom and my dad, the house just was really quiet, and we'd all kind of separated into our own spaces because I had my own room now. I could study and work on my own. My dad took over the dining room as his office, and my mom had her office. So the three of us were very divided. So when we felt things, when we just felt very hopeless that this situation would get any better, it was kind of we truly felt it because we were then alone in our own spaces. But then at the same time, it's we would come together after 5 o'clock. My parents would watch movies together. They would cheer each other up with some games. They would cheer me up with some games. It was a lot of doing things together and just hanging out, ordering food, and then just eating together.
So we experienced such a huge shift in energy on May 25th when George Floyd was murdered on camera by the police. And it was the biggest surge of energy behind a movement that I've ever experienced in my life. Yeah. And we took the time that we had, that COVID gave us, And we really started, especially in Los Angeles, like really started to use it, and people became vocal. We took to the streets. There were riots, there was looting, but it was pretty remarkable because it blew my mind, because I was like, I know that this type of response couldn't have happened if it weren't for everyone being stuck at home and having the time and energy to do something about this. Because it's not that we as a whole are just morally reprehensible people that don't care that cops are, killing Black people at an unprecedented rate. Not that this gave us any more resources to help, but it did give us time. And we really utilized that time. And then, I just started seeing a real shift in the way that people were talking about this situation, and then just the way that people were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and things that needed to change, and all of a sudden everyone was an activist. How did that conversation reach you in Abu Dhabi? What was your view of what was going on in America, and then what was the conversation about it where you were?
It got to me, I think, in our house, our point of conversation on the Black Lives Matter movement that was going on in the States. I was really on social media at the time, just seeing everything that was going on, hearing my friends talk about it, hearing about people's outrage and frustration. And I was just like hearing all these things and thinking, how are people letting this happen? Like, this isn't fair. And I wanted to talk about it too. And I wanted to help, even if I was far away. A lot of it was just like me just doing my own thing, not really minding what my parents were thinking. And I was kind of like just sitting there signing petitions on end, just being like, oh, I can sign this, I can email this person even though I'm not from the States. And I was hearing information, people's experiences online. And then at one point I started sharing that with my mom. I think that's where a lot of conflicts started, especially discussions about the police and the whole defund the police type thing, and the whole Also, social media was really helpful in reminding me that I'm not alone in trying to learn more, trying to unlearn even some things. I think social media played a big part when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement and learning about it from the UAE. A lot of the petitions that were on the website change.org, we couldn't really get access to because the website is really blocked.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of racism does Abu Dhabi deal with from your perspective?
So I'm not an Arab person. I'm also not white. I'm not Caucasian. I feel like there's a lot of discrimination against South Asia and Filipinos. There's a big population in the UAE that's just Filipinos and people from South Asia, Southeast Asia. I get discriminated against. I've noticed people treat me differently before I get to speak. And then they notice from the way that I speak, because it doesn't have a certain accent or a certain tone, that, oh, wow, maybe she's educated.
Wow.
So there's always that. There's also a lot of the jokes, the maybe not overt racism, kind of like very covert, towards, I don't know, just people of color in general. Just the way people act towards us, really, and towards my community in the UAE. Sometimes we get the feeling that we're kind of looked down on. I've noticed that in my apartment building. I remember being younger. I think I was about 16, 17 maybe, and having one of the people who lived in my building a couple floors down from me, he asked me if I wanted to work for him and his family as a maid.
Like, you were just walking by and he stopped and asked you that?
I was trying to, like, I was in the elevator with him because we lived in the same building, and I was just trying to get to my apartment building. And he comes in and he's like, "Are you Filipino?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you know anyone who would like to be a maid, or are you?" And I never really thought about it before, but I had to write a paper about my experience for one of my courses, actually. And I wrote about this specific moment because when I reflected on it, I thought to myself, he would never ask someone who didn't look like me that. He would never ask one of my Caucasian classmates that. He would never ask any of my Arab classmates that. So why did he ask me? The model minority myth still also carries into the Middle East. I feel, especially when I was a kid growing up in high school, having people think, oh, she has to be good at math and science, and people genuinely being shocked that I was more inclined to the arts and I genuinely suck at science and math. Having people look down on me for not being good at those things, constantly being like, are you even Asian?
Wow.
So I never really thought about it at first until I started reading up about different forms of racism and discrimination, like how that mentality kind of bleeds into the way we speak to other people and the way we talk about other people. And yeah, and kind of the assumption, like I remember like sort of the assumption that I was of a certain class because of my race. And I was like, I'm lucky enough to have a very good lifestyle. But that's me being very lucky. But still, can you just not assume? Can you just treat me like a normal human being? Because that would be nice too.
Right. So as a Filipino young woman from a Filipino family who lives in the UAE,
yeah,
where you guys are all experiencing racism, how does your family talk to each other about that? Did you have conversations with your parents? Did they have conversations with you when you were younger about what racism was or how it might show up?
I was told to just not lash out, to just not be so aggressive in my approach. I'm very passionate. I'm very much like, I'm 5'2", but I will knock your teeth out if you say something that I don't like. But like, especially being a woman, my mom was kind of like, it's just safer to just not be so. She loves that I'm outspoken, and she loves that I can speak out in like times of injustice and things that are just unfair. Like, I'll speak out against it, things that I feel like aren't right, especially now that I've gained a lot more confidence in what I think is right and wrong.
Yeah.
But she also knows for my safety, it's also good for me to just hold back a little bit and approach it in a way that makes sure I'm not in danger.
On one hand, you're protecting your physical safety by not responding probably how internally you'd like to respond, but then it's like, it almost feels like you're sacrificing your emotional safety by not being like, don't ask me that question, you know?
Yeah. It was always this feeling that who will protect me and who will be on my side if I speak out against something? Feeling like, okay, if I speak against this person, what are the chances that I will win if they act out against me for speaking out against them?
Right.
And just thinking like, it probably is safer for me to not say anything at all, because this person has connections with who? What's playing for that person? Could it be is the fact that he's a man? Is it the fact that he's Caucasian or Arab? Is it just simply the fact that people look down on me? Most people look down on me for the color of my skin, for the fact that I'm a Filipino in a society where the labor force, you know, the people that you come face to face with in every day all around you are Filipinos. And I just kept thinking like, just stop, just get on with it, move on, get on with it. Damn, like I'm just thinking about how like I remember before it used to be funny to use the Filipino accent, like it was always the butt of the joke. My white friends in school coming up to me and greeting me the same way Filipino servers would greet customers when they come in. There's always a joke about the accent of the Filipino accent speaking English and things like that. Before, I cannot believe I thought it was funny, because when I look at it now, I'm like, yo, that's kind of messed up. Like I shouldn't have been okay with it, but I kind of just let it happen because I was constantly told, let it happen.
What do you think you would do at this point now if a white friend greeted you with a fake Filipino accent, or someone in an elevator assumed that you could work for them? Like, do you feel like the conversation around race, as it's amping up right now, would change your behavior when experiencing racism?
I think it has. I've called out a couple things recently. Some people that I used to know have really shown some true colors. And it's kind of been like, yo, dude, that is not okay. And just letting them know why it's not okay and why I feel it's not okay. So I feel like now if I were to be faced with that same situation where this grown man asked me if I wanted to be a maid because of my race, and if my friends were to do that accent again, I feel like I would have been like, hey, why did you think that was necessary? Why did you ask me about my race before asking me if I wanted to be a maid? That's not okay with me. I don't feel comfortable. Just stating, hey, that's not sitting right with me. Why is it sitting right with you?
Yeah.
Doesn't change anything with them, then maybe I don't want them around. I'm thinking of being a teacher as well.
Yeah.
How do I teach people to recognize other people's differences as not things to just push them away? How do we recognize their differences and accept them? How do we celebrate them even? For us, it seems ridiculous that there are debates about whether or not Black people should have rights, essentially.
Right.
You know?
The fact that the phrase Black Lives Matter is controversial at all. It's the mildest possible phrase. I mean, when you're looking at other like ACAB, all cops are bastards, like typically when there's like a movement, it's a phrase like that. Or, you know, abolish the police. It's extreme to get your attention. Phrases Black Lives Matter, and people are like, Donald Trump, our president, is like, that's a violent phrase. It's like, wow.
I feel like I've been kind of seeing that too with people with the Black Lives Matter movement sparking conversations about Indigenous peoples. I feel like that's also an important conversation to have. And there's just like all these other conversations that have been happening because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and because people are fighting for justice for the Black community, regardless of your race and ethnicity or whatever. Maybe those little things is happening with other people too. They're realizing, you know what? I'm going to speak out about it too. They're being inspired to speak out about things they've always kind of kept to themselves.
You and I are fortunate to be connected to, or want to be connected to, the youth, the next generation, and the next generation is going to be this world, you know, eventually. So let's just make them better. Let's talk to them about their emotions. Let's talk to them about, you know, what's okay and what isn't okay. Let's build equality, and let's build an anti-racist future by the way that we educate our children.
Exactly.
When all of this is over, what are you looking forward to the most? Like something that you miss?
What do I miss? I miss that feeling when I'm with a whole group of my friends, just a whole group of people, and just being surrounded by so much good energy and feeling this comfortable happiness that's not just bursting out, like not the kind of happiness that's like, I'm so happy I could jump off the ceiling, but a kind of happiness that sits so well in my stomach, that just like emanates this sort of like warmth all over my body. It's like this hug from everyone around me that they don't even know that they're giving me this hug, but it's just this hug that everything's fine, everything's good, life is chill. Besides all of the mundane worries, this is it type feelings with my friends. I'm excited for small conversations again.
Oh, that's beautiful. What a beautiful. Me too. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much. I've just truly loved hearing about the world through your perspective. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for opening up this conversation. I think the project is amazing. This is really great.
Cool. I'm glad. I'm glad you think so. I'm really excited to like share everyone's perspective. Have a wonderful evening. Have a delicious dinner. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.